Thank you.
Thank you, officer. The time is 6:00 p.m. and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum and the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. Please rise for the pledges of allegiance and remain standing for the silent invocation.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Please remain standing for the silent invocation. You may be seated. First on the agenda this evening are recognitions. Dr. Dupree.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the board would join me on the floor in front of the dais, we have some outstanding students and staff to recognize.
Mr. President, Dr. Dupree, and members of the board, we have some outstanding recognition this evening, and we're going to start off with two amazing students from James Bowie Middle School. Can I please have Prialba Jadeja and Remington Schmidt come forward? They are 8th grade students. They helped us with the pledge today. They were selected for their outstanding leadership and service to the various organizations that they participate in. We appreciate you coming out this evening. Thank you. Next, we are going to recognize our orchestra students. We have, our 6 orchestra and 2 concert bands for receiving national recognition as winners in the 2019 Mark of Excellence project, sponsored by the Foundation for Music Education. These awards recognize outstanding achievement and performance by high school and middle school bands, choirs, and orchestra. So the following groups competed against 320 ensembles from 38 states. So we're going to call each group up by school, and then we're going to pose for a picture. So we're going to start first with the Dulles High School Symphony Orchestra. If you could please come forward, our National Orchestra Honors National winners, represented by students Catherine Ching and Matthew Ho. And our directors, Michael Isidore, Angela Yep, and Joe Pruitt. If you could please join them for a group picture. And parents, feel free to grab pictures as well. I think we're good. Thank you so much. Great job, Dulles High School. Next, can I please have Nathan Wynn and Elton Ty from Austin High School to please come forward with their directors, Ann Victor and Zoran Jasmak. Again, this is the National Orchestra Honors National winners. We're going to do a group picture. Yeah. We've got some parent pictures here. Yep, go ahead. Come on in. Very good. Congratulations, Austin High School. Next is our Fort Settlement Middle School Chamber Orchestra, represented by students Emma Wang and Joshua Sun. Could you please come forward? And directors Angela Pernier and Roger Vasquez, could you please join us? All right, let's get in the middle for a picture. All right, good job, Fort Settlement Middle School. Next, can I please have Ann Cristiano and Ryan Q to come forward from Sartarsha Middle School? They're representing the Symphony Orchestra. Joined by directors Sophia Shea and Aaron Simons. Okay, we're going to grab a picture. Students, if you'll join us in the middle, please. All right, Sartarsha Middle School, congratulations. Our next category is the National Orchestra Honors Commended Winners, and from Clements High School, the High School Chamber Strings, represented by students Edward Zhang and Wen Young Seung. Directors Ginger Wolf and Neil Springer, please come forward. All right, we're going to get in the center for a group picture, students. Good job, Clements High School. Next, can I please have Rachel Lynn and Sophia Morales, representing Dulles Middle School, to come forward for the Honors Orchestra recognition, and their directors Sally Kirk and Regan Henrik. All right, students, if you'll join us in the middle for a group picture, please. Very good. Congratulations, Dulles Middle School Honors Orchestra. Moving on to the National Wind Band Honors Commended Winners, we have Dulles High School Honor Band, represented by students Anya Johnson and Gabrielle Sincoda. Are they here this evening? Okay, with their director, Joe Pruitt. Let's give them a round of applause. They had a conflict this evening. And then from Sartarsha Middle School, the Wind Ensemble, represented by students Amaya Apt and Nathan Manil, and their director, Julian Amos. Sartarsha Middle School, Wind Ensemble. Couple more for parents. Very good. Congratulations. Good job. Thank you, students, for joining us. Next, I would like to invite Oscar Pettis to come forward. With his team, we're going to be recognizing Leonelli Elementary School and Thornton Middle School for their LEED certification building. So we've got some guests joining us. Can I please have the principals, Gina Sniffen, Joy Swinger from Thornton and Leonetti, to also join us for the photo. And we've got our contractors from IBI, Blair Hamilton, and from S&P, we have Brian Bubb, John Marshall, Nisha Lagu, if you could please join us for the photo. And I'll remind everyone that LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and this provides a rigorous third-party verification on resource efficiency in our buildings. And Gaurav too, please. Join us for the photo. All right, so we're celebrating the LEED certification of both of these buildings. It does take a team to put all this together. It's very exciting for the district, and we want to make sure we get there you go, right in the middle. We got everybody? Well, one more. Congratulations. Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work in making this happen. That concludes our recognition for this evening.
All right, next on the agenda this evening is audience items. We don't have any audience items, correct? Okay, moving on to information. Social emotional learning and comprehensive health update, Dr. Dupree.
Yes, sir. As you know, this has been a major focus of the board and the district for the last couple of years, and I'm excited to introduce a presentation that's going to indicate some significant steps forward in the last year, and I'm going to let Deanna Saavedra, our Deputy Superintendent, begin that presentation. Deanna?
Well, good evening, President Burdine, members of the board, and Dr. Dupree. Tonight, the administration will be sharing information about the work of our new division of social emotional learning and comprehensive health. As a district, we've always supported and addressed the varying needs of our students. But in the past, many of these supports and services were across a number of different divisions. So as we move forward, as you know, we've reorganized our resources to pave the way for a firm foundation to build systems of support to address the district's priority of meeting the needs of the whole child through addressing behavioral health and wellness. So this evening's presentation will provide an overview of the multi-tiered system of support infrastructure that we're working to build. It will discuss specific strategies associated with each level of support. It will define and discuss strategies associated with trauma-informed care and the metrics we will use to determine the impact that these strategies are having on improving our students' behavioral health and wellness. So presenting this evening is our Executive Director of Social and Emotional Learning and Comprehensive Health, Pilar Westbrook. Also Clarissa Rodriguez, our Director of Social Emotional Learning and Enrichment, Steve Shields, our Director of Behavioral Health and Wellness, and two student leaders from our Dulles High School Wellness Coalition, Kima Por Ibrahamabadi and Mihal Matul. Pilar?
Thank you. Board of Trustees, Dr. Dupree. So as far as what we're doing now, I want to let you know that our division, we want to make sure that we're supporting our students mentally and physically so that they're ready to learn. I want to define for you the multi-tiered system of support. So essentially, this system of support is a comprehensive framework used to provide high-quality instruction, expectations, and interventions targeted to support all learners, whether they're advanced or needing additional help. The idea is that we're framing academic, behavioral, and social and emotional services to meet the needs of all students. Tier 1 is truly meant to be a universal support. It's under the guise of Profile of a Graduate, and it's proactive as an intervention, and then providing supports and redirection as needed. In Tier 2, we're providing interventions for students who need a little bit of additional support. And then in Tier 3, we're looking at intensive and more additional supports for students needing that individualized attention. And then our goal is to make sure that we have an infrastructure to make sure to guide the support for students at any level. And then we want to make sure that we're monitoring those interventions so we can make sure that we're making an impact on students as we put these things in place. We're doing this through a team approach. So anything that we do is in this vein: team collaboration, teamwork across our department, project planning, and then building systems and structures to make sure that we have a framework to drive what we want to have happen forward within the multi-tiered system of support. We not only want to team and collaborate across our own division, but across campuses and then across the entire district and all the departments. Our multi-tiered system framework is including Tier 1, which takes care of about 80 to 90% of our students. So we want to make sure to have a framework under Profile of a Graduate that does provide a foundational support to students so that they can be successful, they know the expectations, and then they can meet them. In Tier 2, we want to make sure that we're providing that additional support to the 5 to 10% of students who need additional help And it might be in the form of a more small group intervention, small group counseling through our social workers, counselors, or our safe and drug-free school counselors. And then in Tier 3, we're looking at individualized support as far as our mental health counselors, our mental health clinics, and then making sure that that intensive individualized therapy can be provided to students and even families and staff as they need that. At this point, Clarissa Rodriguez is going to speak on behalf of Profile of a Graduate.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Dupree. Thank you for this opportunity. As mentioned, our board-initiated Profile of a Graduate is the Tier 1 foundational support in continuing to develop a culture of learning in every classroom and ensure students are mentally and physically ready to learn. As I walk you through our current and continued progress, I will be referring to specific milestones that will provide the framework to allow the complete build-out of the Profile of a Graduate. Since the adoption of the profile, our teams have collaborated with multiple stakeholders in the district and within the community to develop and embed 2 of the 7 attributes: effective communicator and collaborative team member. Resources for these attributes are embedded in all K-12 core curriculum units and accessible to all teachers and campus staff to support student learning. Continuing the work, our teams will build out the remaining profile attributes, adding resources for 2 additional traits: compassionate citizen and servant leadership in the 1920 school year. These attributes most naturally align with our district's movement toward a more comprehensive approach to student mental and physical development of the whole child. Additionally, with the development of our new department, we have been intentional about spending more time growing our team's competencies around relationship building, empathy, and understanding how this supports and aligns to instruction. Moving forward, we will continue to build out resources for the remaining profile attributes with considerations to dispositions of learning and character traits, keeping in mind how these integrate and support the mental and physical well-being of our students. At this time, it's my honor to introduce to you 2 students from Dulles High School that deeply embody the profile attributes. They come here today to share the work they are doing with comprehensive health. Please welcome Camilla and Mehul.
Good evening, fellow board members. My name is Mehul Mittal.
And my name is Kimia Pur Ibrahim Abadi, and we are the co-founders and co-presidents of the Student Wellness Coalition at Dulles High School. As students ourselves, we have experienced the intense amount of pressure on us to succeed in life. In many students, this causes high levels of stress and worries about the future. This often leads to mental disorders such as depression and anxiety. I myself have experienced an anxiety disorder and have noticed countless amount of students on my campus undergo the same situation that I did. However, unlike me, they were unable to receive the help they need because they were afraid of reaching out for it. This is due to the huge stigma around this topic. This is what inspired me to establish the Student Wellness Coalition along with Mehul.
Right. Along with the mental health issues a lot of students faced, I was on the substance abuse side, where I saw a lot of students starting to use electronic cigarettes and regular cigarettes to cope with the mental illnesses they were facing. And so together, Kimia and I started the Student Wellness Coalition in order to counteract these different issues. So today, the Student Wellness Coalition actually advocates for 5 different components of health. We advocate for physical activity, for nutrition, for family involvement, and then, of course, substance abuse and mental health in order to follow the whole school, whole community, whole child model, which is the WISP model right behind me. We also try to follow the Fort Bend ISD profile of a graduate in order to encourage students to reach their full potential by helping them with the mental health issues they may be facing and helping them find different coping mechanisms instead of reaching out to these different substances. And And so through the Student Wellness Coalition so far, we've been able to host events such as school-wide assemblies, including guest speakers. We've been able to host poster-making contests at different middle schools, and also host events that raise awareness for physical activity through dodgeball tournaments and basketball tournaments. And through each of these activities, we've been able to make an impact, or we believe we've made an impact on Dulles High School students by allowing them to reach out to an organization that is receptive and knows how to help them with any situation they may be facing.
Our ultimate goal is to eliminate the stigma around mental health. We believe in order to do this, we need to establish our coalition on every single campus, especially high school campuses in our district. Just imagine the amount of lives we will impact. In a world where 1 in 5 individuals experience some form of mental disorder before they reach adulthood, our students will greatly benefit from establishing the coalitions on their campus. Thank you. Thank you. That's amazing work. So as mentioned by Dr. Westbrook, working with Profile, we have a universal strategy associated with strengthening students' social and emotional well-being. We will continue to work through the curriculum to ensure we are addressing the whole child so that our outcomes of student ownership of learning and behavior can be realized. A progression of practice specifically associated with student ownership of behavior has been developed. Campuses will use this tool to self-assess where they are along that continuum, which will be used as baseline data. An additional metric associated with tracking attributes that have been built out and integrated into the curriculum will also be used. Thank you. At this time, I'll turn it over to Steve Shields.
Thank you, Clarissa. President Burdine, Dr. Dupree, Board of Trustees, thank you for this opportunity. So as we seek to develop the whole child and nurture the attributes of a profile of a graduate, our philosophical framework for Tier 2 and Tier 3, which addresses students that maybe didn't get their needs met in Tier 1. And the trauma-informed for Tier 2 and Tier 3 addresses the significant behaviors and mental health challenges. So we're hearing a lot about trauma-informed care, so we wanted to start with a kind of a common definition and language. So trauma-informed care is supporting the whole child by taking into account past trauma and the resulting coping mechanisms when attempting to understand and respond to behaviors. It asks a question, what happened to you, instead of what's wrong with you. In order for us to shift this mindset of both having, of teachers, principals, district staff, of having a trauma-informed lens and also responses, there are 3 focuses. We have staff training, student support, and metrics and milestones, and I'll look at each one of these. As far as staff training for trauma-informed care, we've laid a basic foundation for training of teachers. Our plan for this year is to deepen that model and to develop a training plan and a scope and sequence. This will begin with training key district and campus leaders, along with mental health professionals that include school counselors, social workers, and mental health counselors. And those will serve as trainer of trainers to help build this out to campuses district-wide. As far as our student support, and if we think about Tier 2 again, going back to the 5 to 10% of students who need that additional support, that begins with the campus support team, or what we call the SST. The campus support team is a multidisciplinary group of campus personnel and sometimes district that discuss the student and come up with interventions and strategies in Tier 2. So that can include, which often includes a school counselor, social worker. This could be group support. Also behavior coaching, which could include anger management and social skills groups, which could be run by a PBS facilitator, social worker, or counselor. And then also communities and schools. And communities and schools, we're expanding from 1 campus to 3 additional high-risk campuses for a total of 4 this year. Now moving to Tier 3, we have again Tier 3 is about 1 to 5% of students that need that additional support after receiving the Tier 2 interventions. So once a behavior assessment is done, there's individual coaching of the targeted and specific individual coaching for the student. Also, social workers play a part in Tier 3 as they provide individual counseling and often involve the family at this level to build capacity and also to help them with community resources. And a huge component of our Tier 3 intervention is our new mental health counselor. So the board approved that we now have a total of 6 mental health counselors. So this is the first year that they are operating, and they're providing individual therapy as well as family therapy, wraparound services throughout the district. And I'm also pleased to announce that officially that we received the VOCA grant, the Victims of Crime Assistance, which will allow us to pilot 8 campus-based mental health centers throughout the Willow Ridge, Hightower, and Marshall feeder patterns. These are campus-based centers. We're partnering with select community agencies that will provide the therapeutic services. So we looked at we've talked about the infrastructure, and we've also talked about some metrics associated with the profile of a graduate. So we also have metrics that we're looking at for trauma-informed care. And that definitely involves seeing a reduction in our disproportionality of our special education students, our African-American students, and our Latino students who are being referred for discipline. It also includes a reduction, or the goal of reducing exclusive or exclusionary disciplinary practices, such as in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension. We also are going to look at attendance data, which often mental and behavioral health impacts. The counselor started doing the needs assessment last year, which is going to serve as a baseline for us to see how the impact of some of these resources are. We also track our suicide and threat assessments, so that'll be another data component. And then finally, our campus support requests. So and just to also, with the metrics, also to look at just some key milestones. So just the foundation with the mental health training and trauma-informed, we want to build on that significantly. And a big part of developing the multi-tier system of support is the training plan that we're looking to expand our trauma-informed and to deepen that model, which we've just touched the surface of. We also will pilot, as I mentioned, from the VOCA grant, we will pilot the campus-based mental health clinics, which we will start in those feeder patterns and then seek to expand district-wide throughout the next 3 years. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Westbrook to close this out.
Thank you. So to just close things up, essentially this whole idea is that we put in place a systematic way to provide supports to students, families, and staff. And we want to make sure that we're monitoring whether that's working or not with fidelity of implementation. So we'll use the metrics Steve talked about to make sure that we are doing what needs to be done and that we're providing the support that needs to be provided. So at this point, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Westbrook. Thank you, Mr. Shields and Mrs. Rodriguez. We appreciate all your hard work. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions or comments. Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I wanted to address the students, and I want to thank you, because I think that you may not know it, but you're probably heroes to a lot of kids, and if not now, in the future. So seriously, thank you for what you do. And I actually have, if you guys wouldn't mind coming to the mic, I have a couple questions I'd like to ask.
Absolutely, and I messed up and didn't recognize all our people who are here tonight. So if I can have our SHAC members and staff members just stand and be recognized really quick, since I goofed.
If I may, I'd like to recognize Mrs. Grail James for serving on the SHAC committee as well. So thank you, Mrs. James. Go ahead.
So I wanted to just ask your opinion. Do you think in general that students are able to recognize when one of their peers has undergone some kind of traumatic event? Yeah, I'm not trying. I'm just your opinion. I mean, I'm not trying to. It's not a trick question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
I believe that would be more able to recognize these issues.
Can you
if-
talk in the microphone a little bit more? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We have to hear you.
I believe that
Right.
students would be more capable of recognizing these issues if the students who underwent the trauma are more comfortable sharing them. I think the biggest issue right now is more that students aren't willing to step forward due to the stigma. And if we raise awareness about the subject overall, it will both make them comfortable for stepping forward and also help other students recognize and understand their side of things.
And then, so I guess you kind of started getting into my next question, which would be what would be the best way from that point to help make staff, or more importantly parents, aware that something's going on, because it leads to really bad things, and that I've learned about over the past couple of months.
Definitely. I definitely agree. Students need to know that adults especially are aware of what they're going through. And actually, our coalition has a whole subcommittee dedicated to that. So we have our family and community involvement subcommittee, which actually hosts events for the parents and for staff to be informed about these issues so they can better understand the students.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Seriously, that was a great presentation, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much.
And then I have another question for Mr. Shields or Charles or somebody who might be able to answer. Someone who has undergone trauma, and they're in our system. What happens when our system just can't handle it, and they have to go elsewhere?
Well, I think so. A lot of times in that situation, and I think there are examples where sometimes that trauma is outside the scope of the school, and so the school counselor, the social worker, they work hard to make those referrals. I do think though that now with the mental health, and that was one of the biggest things that I hear from family, from parents, from counselors, from principals, is that we don't have the support to handle the tier 3 behaviors that students are in the mental health issues. And so,
and I meant tier 3, by the way, not tier 1. So thank you for correcting. I meant tier 3, not tier 1. So thank you for correcting me.
No, and I didn't even catch that you said.
Oh.
To be honest. So that wasn't like a undercutting correction. But I do believe that that's a key function of the mental health counselors, and that's for them to come in and to handle some of these situations. They're all LPCs, which is what the students would be referred to. And then, of course, the mental health centers will have a huge impact, as they are full-time licensed clinicians on a campus who can not only impact the students, but also help with some of the issues of reducing the stigma. Just having a mental health counselor or a mental health center on a campus really communicates to the campus community that there's not a stigma. We accept that this is something that goes on, and we have support available.
Well, I also wanted to add, with those mental health clinics, I know that we're piloting at 8 locations, but all students, staff, and families can access those clinics regardless of where they live in the school district. So that's a powerful piece as well. So we're very, very excited about receiving the funding so that we can continue the work associated with that.
And I'd like to just add two things to that, because I think our students address the piece of awareness and the ability to speak up and say you need help. But the other reality in our community is that many parents, even if they knew how to navigate the system, they may not have the financial resources.
You knew where I was going.
Or the network to access. And so that's a critical piece of the schools helping lead them and support them to gain access.
So, and I guess to kind of continue on that, what happens when one of our students, they just can't come back to our school or their school? I mean, because I know we partner with a lot of these centers around the city.
Mm-hmm. So Dina Hill is probably here somewhere, and she may be able to speak to that, because my because my guess is what she's going to tell us is often by the time students are to that level of need, they've been identified for special education services, which opens a whole other realm of opportunities that we can provide support.
Yes, that's exactly right. And we partner through the evaluation process. We do all kinds of things. Sometimes we have to do temporary homebound as we finish that evaluation. If a child just has too much anxiety or trauma to come to school until we get that evaluation finished. Oftentimes we have kids in non-public day schools that really address that significant trauma and anxiety. So there's a whole another level of support for students that are identified for special ed services. And so we work collaboratively during that process.
Okay, and we have special arrangements with some of those centers, right?
Well, we collaborate with Texana, so a lot of our families who may not have a private psychiatrist or support, we'll refer them to Texana. So Texana is also involved in the crisis response, but then also more long-term follow-up. So we work with them. We also work with parents if they have to hospitalize their child and go into some kind of 10-day, 20-day placement, but then also sometimes they have to step down and they'll just go to a day placement, and we may serve them through homebound while they're in that kind of program too, so that we can keep up with their academics while they're going through that.
And is that a cost to the district or the parents responsible for that, or?
Well, through Texana, it really depends on your income and how they work through that, but through the educational portion is our responsibility. Once a student is identified for special ed, or if they're in the process, we usually work with them on providing the education component. And then as we bring those students back, they'll have access to these mental health counselors as well as other supports that are out there. So some of that we pay for, and some of that parents are responsible.
Okay. And just, I don't want to hog the whole night here, but just one comment. I know we got the VOCA grant, which is great, and that only provides support for those schools that qualify in areas that qualify, right?
No, as I said, that they're located on 8 sites that we've identified in those 3 feeder patterns, but students from anywhere in the district and families from anywhere in the district can access those services at those sites.
Okay. Did they have to be, so I guess maybe let me rephrase it. Did they have to be located within certain sites, within certain locations, certain feeder patterns?
Because of the provisions of the grant, we had to apply for the grant and we had to include data associated with victims of crime data and a number of different data sets to qualify for specific areas. They award the grants based on the highest need areas.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Mrs. Tossan?
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. So, yeah, I'd like to echo some of his comments. First of all, I want to commend all the adults that have been a part of this. Our staff, the SHAC committee, parents and community members, Grail, just really, 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 I want to commend you on this work, because we started the Profile of a Graduate a few years ago, and this is where all of this has been leading. So this is the culmination of all of that work. So thank you so much, because it's the adults that are going to create the safe environment for students and for families. But truly, it's the students who are going to make a difference. You guys stepping up is really, and your peers are really what's going to make a difference in a student's life. As most of you know, I have a daughter with a disability, and we've had behaviors throughout her entire life, and it's not trauma type of behaviors, but it's disability related behaviors. And she doesn't respond to anyone or any adult more than she responds to a peer. And so your involvement is critical. And your ideas to spread this coalition to other campuses is just fantastic. And I'll say, and I'm sure all the other board members would echo this, that we support you wholeheartedly. And it's truly going to be you guys who make a difference and who are going to open up the doors for your peers to come forward. And that's the environment that we're trying to create. So I think the partnership is fantastic. I think it's exactly how how we envisioned this going, how we talked about it from the very beginning, and it just makes me very excited that we have this to offer for our students as well as our teachers and our staff. One of the things I wanted to say, I've been on this board 5.5 years, I guess now, and we've always talked about having behavior specialists on the campuses in order to address things in real time as they're happening, because it's important and it impacts learning if we don't have someone there to intervene. And I think these mental health clinics are the start of that. And I think it's going to make a huge difference, not just in the lives of our kids, but really for our teachers and our staff members who don't know what to do. We're not only training them, but we're providing the support. And it makes, especially as a parent, it makes me very excited that we're going to have that. You guys touched on this a little bit, Steve, but one of the questions I had was that the mental health professionals, are those Fort Bend ISD employees, or are those people we are contracting with? Because I had the benefit of being able to sit in on the first meeting with Representative Miller about trauma-informed care, and we talked a lot about contracting out or having people come in to consult. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
So I would say that we've got internal employees in the form of our mental health counselors. But with the VOCA grant and the money that we've received through that grant, these mental health clinics on campuses, we will be contracting out with community partners and services to provide that, just as we saw in Austin ISD when we went to that initial meeting.
Right. Okay, good. Well, thanks for clarifying that. I think the behavior coaching is a big piece of this. So I'm really glad to see that there for our staff and our teachers. And Dina, what you touched a little bit on about going, you don't have to come up. I don't think I have a question, but you can determine if you want to say something. But I do like that we've got that extra layer on our campuses that are going to help us identify kids with emotional disorders. You know, to Dave's point, we do have kids that sometimes we don't know what to do with, and we're not always diagnosing them. And so I think this is a great big step in being able to diagnose kids with those emotional disorders. And if they do need that additional help and they do fall under the special education umbrella, you know, we've got a lot of kids out there who need that. So I'm really glad to see that. I'm going to stop talking, but I just appreciate especially the Shack so much and all your hard work on this, and the students for working with our staff, and y'all present as well as any adult that stands up there. It was really, really good. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mrs. Helliger.
Yeah. First, I just want to acknowledge all of you all and kind of echo those comments that have already been said. I was really, really proud of you guys, especially the students. I am for you, the adults, but the students. And I think about even personally some challenges in my own home, and identifying kids being able to identify when, hey, I need help, you know, and saying it's okay, because it's not cool, you know, to have anxiety sometimes or whatnot. And even as adults, we go through some of those things. We have better ways of coping with it than maybe young people do as they're still developing themselves. And so most of my questions were answered based on the questions that were already asked, but I mean, just want to follow up on some of the partnerships that we're going to do. You know, I'm interested to see if we're going to partner with NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness. I think that I've worked with them in the past for in other areas, and I think they are a great resource for us, just as something for us to consider. As well as when we talk about behavior coaching, you know, before I get into that, you know, when I heard this question, this trauma-informed care definition, I got emotional about it, because just to say, it asked the question, what happened to you versus what's wrong with you. I mean, even as parents sometimes, you know, what's wrong with you? You know, that kind of thing. Why are you acting like this? You know, and I can't imagine a teacher who has 30 kids in a class, you know, when a child is acting up. And so I'm really excited about the fact that we are going to be training all of our teachers on this. and maybe through some of the work that you students are doing and some of the other work that maybe we'll be doing, we could have some more workshops and those kind of things. Because I had to learn this question myself as a parent. I had to ask what happened to you? Right. And so it took the conversation in a totally different light, and me doing that more often, it was very insightful for me personally, because I got to hear my child say some things, nothing too crucial that has happened, but hey, I found this out in 5th grade. That's why I've been acting like this, that kind of thing. And I'm like, you've known it all your life. No, I didn't. That kind of thing. And so it's important for me, even dealing with, like I said, my own child, that this is implemented, and that, can you imagine if our teachers, were armed with this type of information, to maybe ask that question. I even see us in ISS, when a kid has acted up, we send them to ISS. But what happens if the ISS teacher asks and pulls that student aside and say, now, was that the right way for you to handle that situation? Or whatever was causing that child to go to ISS. The coaching that could be done, utilizing that time that they're with in these, ISS or OSS or whatever it is. So I think it just would be beneficial if we wrap a lot of these things, our whole discipline with the work that you all have done here. I think will be very beneficial. I can see it happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Helliger. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Well, I just want to say thank you to all the administrative staff that's worked on this presentation and on this effort, because I know it's been a long road, and I want to just validate all the things that my colleagues said. I deserve zero credit, even though you all thanked me. It's really the SHAC, the students, and the administrative staff that have really led the effort. And I know you have said it before, but these students are really kind of stepping out and doing something new. They're modeling a student shack, a kid's shack is what the state calls it, but a student shack. They're calling it a wellness coalition on their campus, and it's really exciting because they're using the same model that the Fort Bend ISD shack uses, and they're trying to help on their campus. So I look forward to hearing about the next campus that has a student, a kid's shack, a student wellness coalition, because I feel like this is something that we should be replicating in our schools. I want to comment also on another thing. I heard my colleagues talking a lot about behaviors and how that behaviors manifest themselves because of some underlying causes, and we don't always understand what those underlying causes are, and that's really important. And it occurred to me, listening to everyone present today, that some of it is about the relationships that we have with these people and building a relationship, and I know we've talked about that. To have an effective learning environment, we have to have relationships with the kids and everything. But it occurred to me, and I think this is things that the students are working on, and I know the staff too, having the right vocabulary to even answer the question or ask the question. Having people that you can ask on your campus, and that's where these centers come in, and these folks, counselors at our schools. And then having a safe environment to ask the question in the first place, and again, that it's a process, and it'll take us a little time to get there. But I look forward to the time when we can talk about mental health issues and mental illness in the same way that we can talk about getting the flu or catching a cold. I really look forward to that day. So, and I hope it's here in Fort Bend ISD. Because that will be impactful. That will be very impactful. So I also had an idea. Charles, get your pencil ready. Here's my idea, because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Goal 4 and writing a new objective for Goal 4, and it was around safe and secure environment. We kind of bantered that around a little bit. I wondered if that objective should look something more like mental and physical wellness for students. It might encompass the things we're talking about today, but it would also encompass the safe and secure environment that the administration was trying to capture. So if we talked about mental and physical wellness, it could be all health-related issues as well as the safety of our buildings and our facilities. And it would be student-focused because it would be about having our students be in that state. So that's my suggestion. So thank you very much for allowing me to make those comments.
Thank you, Mrs. James. In closing, I'd like to echo everything that's been said this evening up here. There's a lot of great comments, and I'm going to make just a few, I made a few little notes here, and Mrs. Helliger touched on this, but what was probably one of the most powerful part of the presentation to me is what Mrs. Helliger said, which is what happened, not what's wrong with you. And that was really powerful to me. When I think of this, or when it's presented to me, my mind goes to school safety. Like when I think of school safety, this is what I think about. And I know it doesn't encompass all of school safety, but it is a huge component of school safety. So I just wanted to share that with you. And as Ms. Towson had said, we support you, and we thank you for being here this evening. And thank you to the SHAC, thank you to the parents, thank you to admin, thank you to the students. And this is really powerful. So once again, thank you. Appreciate you. We will now move on to closed session. Are we all good? All right. We will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meeting Act, Chapter 551, and those sections listed in the agenda, and for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any and all subject matters authorized by law. We are now convened in closed session.